Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us again. I suppose what is our Hines Legal podcast/webinar. We're across multiple platforms now, but we still haven't quite come up with the name for it. So I'm sure that'll happen in due course. My name's Frank Higginson. I'm a partner at Hines Legal. And for those of you that are frequent watchers and listeners, today we don't have Chris Irons, who's on a break. What we have, I suppose, is his reliable substitute, Guy Elloitt, who is a long-standing resident manager and also the president of ARAMA. So, Guy, welcome, mate. How's your week been?
Hey, Frank. Hey, everyone. Yeah, thanks for having me back. Appreciate the callback. It's always good to get a follow-up. But yeah, keep him busy, mate. Always busy. There's always something to do. So it's been good.
I suppose we didn't have too many complaints about your first appearance, so I suppose maybe that's why you're back, which is good.
Yeah.
So for those of you listening on our YouTube channel, post questions live, and we can see those as we go. Or there'll be a link there to put some more lengthy ones later on, and we'll come back to you after that. So we're always happy for feedback. And today, and I'll put my hand up for this, and this is actually going to give credit to Chris. We've said this is dealing with difficult people from a resident manager's perspective, and I think I go back to when Chris started, or he and I started doing these things. The Commissioner's Office ran a seminar series on difficult people, and instantaneously they had a complaint about people writing in saying, "You're labelling me difficult when all I'm doing is standing up for my rights, doing what I can do, asking questions that are legitimate," and so on. So really, this isn't so much difficult people as it is challenging people, is the phrase that we now use. So apologies if anyone got offended by that. And certainly it does make more sense, because it is what we're dealing with today is really a range of, I suppose, challenging behaviour from a resident manager's perspective. So when Guy and I got together and sort of chatted about the groups of people or the types of people that resident managers have got to deal with, it's really sort of committees, obviously. We've got lot owners in the capacity as just a normal lot owner, or someone who might be owner-occupier, or someone who rents their property via an outside agent. We've got owners who are acting for as letting agent. We've got tenants. And I suppose we've also got body corporate managers, and that's really the strata ecosystem that resident managers are going to have to deal with. And Guy, for those of you that have listened to our previous webinar, I suppose had an interesting few years across a range of fronts. And today, I think probably we're diving a bit deeper, mate, in terms of what you learned from those experiences.
Yeah, I have to say I've had a fair few experiences with different sorts of people, and look, you don't like to put a label on people, but yeah, there's certain people that like to push your buttons, or I'm not sure if that's the right word to use, but they like to be difficult to get to an outcome. I mean, again, I'm a mechanic, so we look for a solution and we try to fix something. Whereas I've found in my experience personally that's not always the case with some people. You know, they maybe that article that we've spoken about that I read recently, and they were labelled conflict junkies, and that sort of resonated with me, because the people that I've had experience with, and I'm not talking about all people, I'm talking about a very, very limited number, love the conflict, and if that conflict ended, they'd be involved in the next conflict and the next conflict, and all of a sudden you went, wow, this is ongoing, it never stops.
Yes, and mate, I know it's sort of sometimes we help people as well, and sort of they keep coming back with dispute after dispute after dispute, and it's sort of at some stage it's like maybe you need to have a good hard look in the mirror, because there's a consistent theme in your life, and it's you being involved in fights.
Yeah, look, there's a way to go about doing business, and unfortunately, from my experience, sometimes those people, I wouldn't call them professional in the way they've been acting. They're a long way from it. And particularly in a body corporate atmosphere, and I don't know why, but especially when you have committee meetings and you have public meetings, that can bring out the worst in people, and the way they would act in that forum, they wouldn't necessarily act at their own job or in their own family, or I've seen some outrageous behaviour at some of these meetings that I wouldn't call normal by any stretch of the imagination.
No, and this is, I suppose, the constant tension from a legislative perspective, where the government wants to have people involved in their body corporate affairs and be able to be on committees and go to meetings and vote and do all that sort of stuff, which is, something that realistically should be encouraged, because people if they've bought a unit, they should be entitled to participate in the affairs of the body corporate in whatever way they choose. But the counter argument to that is that there's no training, qualifications, understanding, professionalism, courtesy that's actually required. So you can talk about codes of conduct and that sort of stuff, but for all intents and purposes, that's meaningless. People do carry on like pork chops because in a sense, there's no consequences. If you do that in a resident manager's capacity, might be a breach of your agreement. If I do it as a lawyer, I get sacked, or someone complains about me to the Legal Services Commission or whatever it might be. But I'm a volunteer, or I own a unit and I'm going to say my piece now. I don't care what anyone else says. It does encourage some misbehaviour.
Well, and the hard thing about living in, and you don't need to tell half the viewers that live in these complexes, is we all live together. So I own a lot in here, and I have to live with the other people. And if you've got to go and deal with a thorny issue, and you're the chairman or you're a committee member, and these people might, essentially difficult, and they can be difficult in your community. So you go to the pool with your family, you're striking these people in public. That can be difficult. So, from my experience, one of the tactics these people use is they overwhelm members of the committee with either very, very voluminous emails, fronting up at their front door, knocking on the door, and being, just walking into their lives and making out whatever the issue may be, and just sort of constantly bashing them with it. And those people eventually say, look, this is a volunteer position. They go out the back door. And these are the people that I would like to see on the committee, because they're educated, they're professionals, they're really good at what they do in their own life. They're engineers. They can help the complex in different areas, but they're often pushed out because of a couple of individuals and the way they go about doing business. And that's the reality of what I've seen in 6 years. And that's the reality of what I get when I talk to other managers. And when I get around, they see this quite often. It's just the way. If everyone could sit down and have a debate or a discussion that's respectful, that would go a long way to solving a lot of the issues in body corporate. But from my experience, it's not how it rolls.
Who screams the loudest? He or she, I suppose, to be non-gender specific. So, mate, I suppose let's start with committees. Obviously, every resident, not every, 99% of resident managers out there are going to have a committee that they're dealing with. So you've had good committees, bad committees, good committees now, which is great. When you had, I suppose, in your mind, a committee that was a bit challenging to deal with, how'd you go about that? How did you manage that? How did you and Catherine deal with that?
Yeah, it was interesting. And what you just said there, I've had good committees and bad committees. I've never had a bad committee. I've never had a member on the committee that I would say is bad. I would have members on the committee that don't have the same, general view that we had of running a business. Their outlook on running a business was sometimes polar opposites. And
so in terms of what they think you should be doing as opposed to what you are doing.
That it comes down to that and how you communicate in business and stuff. Like a lot of these people, like I would say, the really, really low percentage really just want to get in there and cause grief. But a lot of people, everyone runs their business different, and it's just how you get to that goal at the end of the day. And you can have clashing of personalities and different ways to get to that outcome. So most, like I said, I've never had experience with someone coming on the committee for the wrong reasons, but then they get on the committee and they get their personalities don't mix, or they just get it just gets all tumbled up into this mess. And then that's when it gets down to their relationship about what our job is. I mean, to the point where we were getting a text message from committee members, husband and wife, sort of sending me messages of cars parked illegally and saying, "Do your job." That was the text message. I mean, you don't need to send it like that.
No.
And if you're on the committee, you are the one that enforces the bylaws. So it's understanding that and being able to communicate the difference was the challenge. And essentially, I mean, personally, how I went about it at Selfish Point, I understand how it works. I mean, it's a popularity contest. So I went and lobbied for some owners that did see things my way. And I encouraged them to get on the committee, and I supported them to get on the committee. And people looked, I got in a lot of disputes about that. The caretaker, that's a conflict of interest. And all of these sorts of words, and you can't do that. For you or a solicitor, is that something I can do? I can go and lobby other owners to get on the committee.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the joy of the country in which we live. It's a free country, and you're entitled to express your opinion. So anyone who's a lot owner is well and truly entitled to say, I think you should vote for person A and not person B. I think you should vote for increasing the levies or not increasing the levies. It's a free country. So, and then it's down to that strata democracy in terms of he who has the most votes wins. He or she again, sorry. So I suppose, so your way of dealing with challenging committee members was probably to not necessarily blow up and send an abusive text message back, but to sort of find other people to replace them that might be a little bit more professional, courteous, understanding of the way the place should work.
Yep, that was the challenge, and that's one thing that we learned through to communicate and just being around the industry with people like yourself and watching how other people operate in a dispute. So when you're in a dispute, sometimes you're not the person in the dispute, and if you find someone that's experienced in the dispute, you sit back and watch what they do, and you'll find the difference. If you watch someone that's essentially one of these people we're talking about, you'll find a 100-page, hundreds of an email sent with hundreds of pages. Very voluminous, maybe hard to read, going in all sorts of different directions. And the other person in the dispute, if they know what they're doing, you'll probably find they don't respond, or they give very little information back. And there's no need to, they don't get into the tangle with them, which sometimes they want to get into. And I learned that early on. And if I get that text message that I talk about, I didn't respond. There was no need for me to be responding to that. And to this, to a certain point, it gets to a part where we actually block people's emails, and ask them not to send us stuff. Our role as a caretaker is not to communicate with the 99 lot owners at selfish point. It's to communicate with the person on the committee.
And I think in a management rights sense, it's very easy. And I shouldn't say people to lose sight of that, because they don't understand that's the position. Like, if you're trying to do the right thing, you do talk to everyone. But in a sense, I suppose it's the same thing I say to committees. Like when we're working for a body corporate, I don't have 99 lot owners emailing me to say, do this, don't do that, whatever. I say to the committee, there's one of you I need instructions from. You can go and sort out all the other, I'll ask you the questions. You go and figure it out as a committee. You come back one person and give me instructions. Because if you're going to go and take instructions and communicate with 60 people, 7 committee members, it's going to be potentially diabolical. And particularly when, and I suppose you're back to what that relationship is. As a caretaker, you report to the committee, and ideally one person on the committee, and that's it. You're not accountable to individual lot owners, but a lot of resident managers absolutely get caught up in terms of lot owners who aren't on the committee, might not like management rights, might not understand the way it works, coming and trying to tell you, do this, don't do that, whatever it might be.
And from early days, I'd pull people up very quickly on that. If the conversation headed down that line, I would be soon pointing out that I'm not the committee. And like being on any board, you don't act for the board as one person. You write your information in about what you want to the committee, and in a professional manner. And I suppose that's what can happen with these people we talk about. They do that. They do write into the committee. It's just the way that they ask for what the way they communicate, and then the way if they get told no, oh my God, the avalanche of emails then start. And all of a sudden it tumbles out of control. And definitely seen my fair share of it. All different sides of it. And I mean, even in a committee meeting once, we sat in a committee meeting. We knew there would be some people there to be disruptive. We asked the chairman to not go down this road, to essentially, look, guys, this is not why we're here. This is not on the agenda. I think it took about 2 minutes. We politely said, listen, guys, if this is going to continue, we're going to leave. And we left. So we only lasted 2 minutes. We left. We walked out of the meeting. We said, we don't need to be here. And from a mental health point of view, that's the best thing you'll do with your life.
Yes. It's the stuff that keeps you up at night those... And even the thought of the confrontation before that meeting. So I suppose you've been helped by having probably a good chairperson, because that's a chairperson that's in control of the meeting, which is excellent. Probably a body corporate manager that knows what's going on as well and is willing to sort of pull the trigger as needs be. And part of this is managing people's behaviour when they don't know what the behaviour rules are. It's like, again, back to that ability to become part of a body corporate comes because you buy a lot. There's no rules around that. It's like teaching a 3-year-old. You play nicely. You don't call each other names. You share your toys in the sandpit. Owners don't have even that same set of regulations. So, mate, when you've got, and you've definitely had this, those challenging lot owners that you're not managing their units. They're not on the committee. They're just owners in the body corporate who happen to live there and run around causing all sorts of grief, and not necessarily just to you, to other people as well. But we're talking about it today from a management rights perspective. How do you deal with those people?
Yeah, look, it was something that we it's been a challenge, and I'm talking from a mental point of view. Mentally, these people can be draining. They can be very toxic to your life. And yeah, we definitely had that. And to deal with them, I suppose everyone's different. So you got to work out who you got. But in the end, it was body cameras. So we ended up getting body cameras. Because I suppose the scenario eventually was, and we spoke about this, but we ended up getting taken to court with I can't think of the name of the order they were going for.
AVO or?
No, it wasn't AVO. It was they applied to the court. Yeah, like a peace and good behaviour. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, so
someone's feeling threatened.
They're feeling threatened and everything like that. And so we started that process, and essentially with the court's right to you, so you're right in your defence. And my defence involved about 12 or 15 items of video evidence. It was very, very strong evidence about what some of the actions these people had taken, and within sending this to the solicitor and giving him time to look at this, the barrister or who it was we sent it to, we got a phone call back pretty quickly saying, "Give me a minute." I'm pretty sure he rang the other solicitor and said, "Do you know what I've got?" Because we had video evidence. I mean, it was undeniable how good that evidence was about accusations they had made versus what we could prove. And of my experience, again, I'm only speaking about my experiences. Everyone's different, but my experience with some of these people is they tend to make stuff up, when they don't get their own way, or they go to a committee meeting and they know that the numbers aren't on their side, and we are in the conflict. The conflict between me and them, in a sense that they don't like us, then they start ringing owners and saying, these people are not good people, and they flat out lie. So how do you defend yourself against that when someone makes something up? And I look to the police, and the police are wearing these cameras everywhere because I think they get that every day of the week.
Yeah, absolutely they do. Yep.
So yeah, we actually ordered a couple of body cameras, which the body corporate paid for. Believe it or not, we didn't have to pay for them because we had a good committee at the time. Because guess what, we weren't the only ones that were getting conflict from these people. Because they not only turned their attention to us, they turned their attention to the committee, they turned their attention to other owners. These people, they're conflict junkies. They will take any conflict on. So it was, and from managing that point, then to understand, they sent every one of our owners a statement saying that we'd been stealing along with the chairman. That was the statement they wrote. Even though at the bottom, I mean, it had a little article that said that the above facts the above information might not be factual or correct. Please do your own research.
That doesn't protect you from defamation. I can tell everyone that now without any equivocation.
So, but they sent that to every owner. I mean, I did nothing. So I didn't contact my owners. I spoke to a couple of owners briefly who actually contacted me and had a laugh with me. And because these people dug their own hole. You don't need to go and tell other owners and defend yourself against some of these people, because you can see that. It's not these people shouldn't be hard to see. They're very easy to see. They've got long-winded emails. They're erratic. They don't have any sort of common sense. Most times when I go to speak to owners, they're great people. We communicate easily. If you do need to tell them no, and you give them a reason why that whatever they're asking for maybe a no, they don't abuse you. They say, "Yes, I understand that, guy. Thanks for letting me know." You can communicate different things. Unfortunately, the little 1% we're talking about, that's not the way.
And mate, every village has its idiot, and that's and I suppose where I've got to over the years is, I think, to ballpark, 90% of people see straight through it. Like I reckon the vast majority of people in strata communities aren't crazy, have other things in their lives, recognise that there's the odd loose cannon or loose unit, I suppose, floating around. and will see through it immediately. And then there's a percentage that will run with them and eventually through it. And then there's a couple of rusted on crazies that tend to live in the same conspiracy theory world and everyone's out trying to get them. So, mate, I think, yeah, and that's definitely the case where it's much better not necessarily to go and remind everyone what these people have just said, because everyone's already laughed it off.
Or haven't read
Rid of
it.
it.
I haven't read it at all. Like some people, most people, and that's one side of it, I suppose. So there's the people that don't read it, but there's a serious side where people do read it. And I mean, if you're watching this today, and you, because we had an owner in our complex who we'd never met, and they basically had nothing to do with us right up until the day they sold, and had and wouldn't communicate with us basically because they did believe some of these things that these people were saying. So the majority didn't. But there was people they touched, and there was people that they would get to through this. And it was I'm talking from a caretaker's point of view. This is my business. This is my life. These people were actively going out to destroy my business. You know, that's not a very nice thing to do.
So when you were wearing a body camera, it was visible. It wasn't hidden in a pen or anything like that. People could see that, like you do when you're talking to a cop or wearing one. It's very obvious that that's what's happening.
That's what you want. That's the idea. That's what you want. These days, I mean, we actually don't have them people have sort of that solve that issue. So we just wear them on our hip, and they're not as confrontational as being up here on the chest. But yeah, if you're in that situation and you're anybody, whether it's a body corporate manager or a caretaker, I'd recommend you wear a body camera, or an owner for that instance. I mean, I've heard of plenty of owners in committee roles under that sort of stress, and people will act differently if they think they're getting recorded. It's just a reality.
Absolutely. And you've got to remember too, it's going to record your behaviour. So if you're carrying on like an unregistered, it's going to be just as accountable as the people you're trying to record. And yeah, I think it does change people's behaviour when they know what's going on is being recorded. That is without doubt.
Yeah.
That's certainly been my experience in meetings. So, and so that's the lot owner component. We've got a question here from David, and we'll come to. So, mate, over your time also, you've had good and bad body corporate managers, challenging and good ones. How do we deal with those?
I mean, body corporate managers have a tough job, and I suppose it's the same thing. If you as a lot owner don't agree with what your body corporate manager's doing, and you think someone else is can do a better job, then it's easy. You can change. It's a vote at an AGM, and if you get the power, you can change it. But understand that I get a lot of phone calls, and the essential argument about what most people's problem is with the body corporate manager is really misunderstood. Very similar to a caretaker. It's really the committee that's the issue. That they ring up about, or they've got an issue with, and the body corporate manager gets lumbered with the blame. But look, the thing I would say about working with body corporate managers is they're just there to do a job, and if you can communicate with them and be respectful of them as well, you'll get a good result, which we have. And I think the one bad issue we had with the body corporate manager was essentially when we bought Selfish Point, everyone was at war with itself. So it really just unfortunately needed to be cleaned out so that you could bring some new, fresh people in that never had any history, that never had any sort of baggage, so that you could start to operate properly. That was the reality of it, and that was a challenge. That's not easy. It's not easy to go and get owners to commit to taking on a challenging person. It's a very, very tough thing to do. It's not easy. A lot of time on the phone.
Yeah, and I suppose you've got to have the willingness to do it. So, David, your question is, if a body corporate manager coordinates a meeting for civil behaviour, the disgruntled owners will turn to them personally and replace them. So what incentive does a body corporate manager have to help with poor behaviour? And the reality is probably none. And I suppose this is part of where, I only got to in my professional career, and I think Guy's definitely there as well, is sometimes there's people you shouldn't be acting for. That's the reality. Some people are beyond help. So I'd say from a guy's perspective, comes into a building with a lot of baggage, a lot of entrenched positions, a lot of history. The only way to fix that in some sense is to clean that out and start with a clean slate. And I know from a body corporate manager's perspective, I've had this conversation with countless body corporate managers over the years, is I don't know why you're acting for that building. That building has got history. is going to continue to have history. It's always going to have those people having a chop at each other, and body corporate managers just get distracted. That 80-20 rule. 80% of your work comes from 20% of your clients. That 20% of the difficult buildings. Almost in one sense, take your 80 lots and go to one of my competitors and don't take no for an answer. Go cause them the grief.
It's a very good point. I mean, what motivation would a body corporate manager have to get involved in that? Because they'll get punted if they get on the wrong side. So it's look, and I understood that. If you're a caretaker out there, if you're an owner out there, and you want to make change, there's only one thing you need to understand: it's majority. It's a popularity contest.
And if you don't have the majority and you lose, look out, because then the winners are going to be.
Absolutely, yeah. And if, to be honest with you, if I got in a situation and I owned a complex and I was losing drastically and they didn't operate with my values, I'd sell. I'd leave. That's
mate, we've had that again. I suppose not really a conflict. Declaring I've acted for you for your entire time. We've had that conversation.
Yeah.
And it is a genuine. Like I suppose in any issue, the first thing in terms of what do I do with this problem, the first thing is nothing. That's always a choice, doing nothing. But in a transactional sense, in a management rights, its sell is absolutely always a genuine choice. And it's not that you necessarily can't afford to do it, it's just you're not wanting to do it. So, mate, what I might do is just cut to a couple of other quick questions here. So, Nicole, hello. No, I don't think you need to tell people if you're party to a conversation, you can record it. So if I'm talking to Guy and we're on the street, I can have my phone running in my pocket, recording it. I'm part of the conversation, no problem at all. What we think, both of us, is that telling people that you're recording it will actually produce a better outcome in terms of behaviour. And you don't need permission to record in public spaces. You know what I mean? If people have an expectation of privacy, if you're putting something over a fence to focus on their bathroom, and that's slightly different. If you're walking around, if Guy's walking around on the common property doing the gardening, then that's not really private. So that's completely and utterly up to him. And I think probably, mate, the other thing as we were talking about this, as we come to the end, is I reckon, well, we both reckon, one of the biggest banes of our existence is bloody email.
Yep.
And reply all, and urgency to respond, and demands on email, and particularly those late night ones. Those ones, and you get at 9 o'clock, you happen to look at your email and it's a spray from someone about something, and that takes you an hour and a half to calm down, and you still wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you can't get back to sleep. So my trick for that, I can tell you, if anyone's dealt with me knows I'm an early starter, but come 5 o'clock, 5:30, I'll usually go for a walk of the dog with the wife. My phone goes off and I don't turn it back on. That's my way to avoid that sneaky, because if I leave it on, it's very easy to go have a look. And then you do occasionally get that email and it just, it comes up through your throat.
From a caretaker's point of view, we've got to be a little bit more on the ball, but I have turned off the function for your emails so that they don't come up. So, you get your emails come up on your phone, you can turn that off. So I definitely
you don't get the notifications or the emails?
No. So they only I have to go physically look at them to find them.
Okay.
And then I suppose the biggest tip is really, do you have to respond? When you get that email and it's going to keep you up at night, but understanding the difference between how your feelings are writing it 5 minutes after you read it versus 3 or 4 days after you read it is a massive emotional difference.
The 24-hour rule is extraordinarily good, because you're dead set. Whatever you respond, that thing you're responding to straight away will be completely different if you write it at the same time next day.
Oh yeah, and you must have knocked up telling me that, and I finally listened. Because I'm no shining example. I'm only talking about this stuff because I've been through it and made mistakes. I responded to the email, sat up at 2 a.m. Just bounced straight out of bed and that bugger it, I'm going down to hammer it. And, not saying, but no, so it keeps you up, so it's best not to see them. And these challenging people that I dealt with, I block them. So I bounce their emails, I block them. I delete their numbers, I make sure they can't contact me. Simple as that.
And again, back to, I suppose, that relationship, you as long as they're not the committee liaison person, you're fine. Yep. And I've said to clients, tell them, you know what, I'm not going to accept this sort of behaviour, and I am, from this point forward, blocking your email, blocking your phone. I'm not going to respond to anything you send me.
That's right, mate. So you've got to set the boundaries with people, because they don't know what they are. they will smash them.
Yep. Otherwise, you just keep getting belted. So,
Yeah.
but that I think is a wonderful place to finish, because if we dealt with email pain for everyone, that would take away probably half of the grief that we all get every day. And that's not just a management rights thing; that's an everybody thing who's got bloody email. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Guy, thank you yet again for your pearls of wisdom. We'll do another one of these. Keep our management rights series going. So. Hopefully see most of you at 2:00 next week, next Thursday. So everyone, thank you.
Thanks, Frank. See you, mate.
See you, mate.